What if the conversations we've been told to avoid are the ones we need the most? What if we have become so afraid of offending people that we've stopped asking better questions?
Because growth doesn't come from staying comfortable. It comes from questioning assumptions, challenging ideas, and being willing to hear perspectives that aren't your own.
Some conversations will make you uncomfortable, some will challenge what you believe, some might even change your mind.
Listen, we're not here to tell you what to think. We're here to ask better questions, to explore different perspectives, and to have the conversations most people avoid.
No scripts, no echo chambers, no sugarcoating. Just honest conversations about leadership, relationships, business, health, money, culture, and what it really means to live well in a complicated world.
And hey, you don't have to agree with everything you hear, but if every episode leaves you thinking long after it's over, we've done our job.
You're listening to Let's Not Sugarcoat It. Let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Not Sugarcoat It. We've all heard the advice, you know your worth, just move on. If they wanted to, they would. But if relationships were really that simple, why do many intelligent, self-aware people still find themselves stuck in the same painful patterns? Today's guest believes the answer isn't found in dating hacks or quick fixes. It's found in understanding ourselves. Katarina Phang has helped thousands of people navigate heartbreak, attachment, emotional healing, and the complicated psychology of love. Today, we're asking the uncomfortable questions. Can your nervous system mistake chaos for chemistry? Are we addicted to fantasy more than the people? Can someone truly love you and still be incapable of giving you the relationship you deserve? If you've ever questioned your relationship, your patterns, or even yourself, this conversation's for you. Welcome, Katarina, to the show.
Thank you for having me. This is a rare appearance for me. So, yeah, I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah, so, we were talking earlier and we talked about your vibe, extreme polarity, radical surrender, no BS truth bombs. How did you get into this work and coaching in such a manner where now in today's society and even on social media, we seem to be coddling everyone, the cancel culture, like you said earlier, being afraid to say and speak the truth because we're going to offend somebody. So how did you drop that armor and just step into who you are right now?
Well, just for an introduction, I didn't plan to be a coach. I didn't plan to do this kind of work, right? I believe 13 years ago, on 2010, around that time. So it's actually already 16 years ago.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Sometimes I just got mixed up in my head about timing. So my marriage was breaking down at that time, right? So I was in a sort of very confused state of mind. I was looking for help, searching for help. How could I sort of amend this broken relationship, broken marriage? So that's basically how it started, right? So I would dwell into a lot of. At that time, there wasn't so many coaches, so I would go into whatever available on the market at that time in regards of dating and relationship coaching and how to deal with breakup, how to get your ex back and so forth. So I began to purchase like some ebooks, but none of them really spoke to me in a very sort of convincing way. So a lot of time I just asked for a refund because all this is just at that time only ebooks like $47 and all that. This is not doing anything to me, like a lot of fluff in it. So that's how it started. Then I began to really just study, with some coaches who already there at that time. And basically through trial and error, I perfected their philosophy. Right. And I didn't know that what I found out during those years of trial and error really worked for the women who came for me for help, and without my expectation whatsoever and beyond my wildest dreams. There would be like dozens and dozens of women who came to me during those times, like almost on a daily basis, saying, what you taught me works really well. Now we got back together. Now we save our marriages. Or I got the non-committal guy that we call the EUM, which stands for emotionally unavailable man. So I got my UM to commit and we're going to get married. And it happened consistently day after day after day after day. I never had to solicit for testimonials because my clients would just very happily, very excitedly come to me and say, Kat, you're at Facebook, we're getting married, we got back together, this and that, just on a daily basis. And then in no time, I began to create this support group in Facebook at that time, right? And it was buzzing with activities, like thousands of women every day through dozens and hundreds of posts. And at that time, of course, because there was not like today. Today is the coaching industry is so saturated with a lot of new coaches selling and saying the same exact things, right? This has become a cliche. At that time, I was kind of like a pioneer. So there was an aspect of novelty in there because I was like among the first, who spoke these things and actually work helping tons of women. That's why, without me having to sort of pretty much advertisement is basically the word of mouth of my happy clients.
Yeah.
And it was just growing organically, this support group, just buzzing. Yeah. So that is the history, how I became a relationship coach.
How do you differentiate yourself? Because with the culture today, we seem to be coddled, and you say that your approach is different. You're very raw. You're in your face. You said the way you approach things is completely different.
Yeah. Approach is different because it's not based on formula. I teach my clients basically to coach themselves, and to be able to coach yourself, you also need to be able to put yourself in the other person's point of view, in the other person's shoes. So what I teach is basically the expansion of awareness, the expansion of consciousness, which is the basis of my teachings. That's why it works. It's not about, if he text back in 5 minutes, or wait 3 days, or, don't have sex the first 10 dates and all that, right? Some people say you should wait until 3 months to have sex, this and that. I said, no, don't do that way. Do it because you feel right inside yourself. And what feels right to you might not feel right to other people, because everyone is different. But always trust your intuition. Always trust your true self. So that is the basis of my teaching. So there is no like formula. Everyone will be different. But if you are okay with who you are and you're happy in your own skin, whatever you do doesn't really matter because you're already happy anyway. And that core happiness is what attracts man to no end, because then he realizes this woman doesn't need me to be happy. This woman just will be so immersed in her own life. I'll be just icing on the cake, which is in the beginning for a man that is very important, because they don't want to be the source of a stranger's happiness in the beginning, right? Basically, you don't know each other. You only dated for like 3 months. You are virtual strangers to each other. So men need women who are just so resolved and full within themselves to be able to maintain attraction with them. And a lot of women don't have that skills yet until I came to the picture, and I tell them, you have too many expectations, and this expectation is what ruined the blooming relationship. It's blooming right now, but because you don't believe in yourself, right? You are being basically brainwashed by the propaganda out there. Oh, if he doesn't commit in 3 months, he will never commit to you. And I have proven it wrong time and again. It's not that. I have actually helped a woman who's been in a situationship for 20 years. And she came to me, Kat, you wouldn't believe this, but he came to me this morning, Christmas Day, and he proposed to me after 20 years in a non-committal relationship. Your teachings were so different. So there was something that I tweaked within her that made a total difference. And she's also a black woman, which is like in a black culture, there just this proliferation of single mothers having children out of wedlocks. So black men basically don't want to commit to black women and all that issue. So with my tweaks, she managed to get her boyfriend of 20 years, or her EUM, to propose and marry her.
Yeah. Do you feel like the onus is on the woman? Because there's a lot of, even when you're saying, you're like, I taught the woman how to behave or how to be so that the man will find her attractive. What about the men? Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's so much that
Yeah, so
we
much
need to
pressure on the
change
women.
and so much pressure. I don't feel at 46 years old, I do not feel like I need to change everything about myself or be the
Yeah,
only one doing the tweaking
I agree.
and having catered my whole life to a man.
I
Right?
agree.
I think it has to go both ways, but I feel right now that we are putting so much pressure. Like I know in one of your posts, you talk about, that toxic masculinity that women are right now in and how we need to get out of that and how to change ourselves. But it's how do we change ourselves versus how does the man show up for the woman so she can actually feel safe enough to step out of her masculine and into her feminine energy.
Here's the magic of my teaching, because I always told my clients, because you come to me, I can only work with you. I cannot work with your guys because they don't need my help. They don't seek my help. And the only person who seeks my help is you. So what you can control is yourself, not other people. So start with yourself. So we start doing things differently. Right? And men or people respond to your energy. So if you shift your energy, the other person will also change. So this is what I teach. If you perceive things differently, the things that you perceive begin to shift, to change. But if you're stuck in the toxic cycle of viewing your guy as not good enough because he doesn't fulfill your expectations 100% of the time, and you have to lash out, you have to tell him because you don't pick your battles, because a lot of coaches say, oh, he's supposed to do this, he's supposed to do that, like, treating those things like a gospel, that will basically derail the blooming path, right? The blooming courtship. So I come to the picture to tell you a different sort of point of view. So I provide the point of view of the guy so you understand. The minute you understand, you stop being so bothered by everything that he does or doesn't do, by everything he says and doesn't say. You become soft. And as you soften, he's drawn toward you a little bit more. And then he will step up a little bit more. Because you don't demand it with anger, but because you just accept, hey, yeah, I understand. Everyone is busy. But then also, I teach them to hedge their bets, meaning that do not commit to a guy who only treats you as an option. So always be on the same page with a guy. So if he's not committed to you, don't commit to him. If he's still seeing other girls, you still see other men. So you mirror him at all times. Instead of blabbing, telling him what to do, mothering him, getting angry, which doesn't work at all with guys, getting angry, all pissed off all the time, right? Of course, you can get angry for really, really, fundamental things. But, getting angry because your text hasn't been answered in 20 minutes, for example, it's not going to help you. So I teach them how to see things from a different point of view. So they expand their awareness, they expand their consciousness, and knowledge is power. The minute they're aware of their own blind spots, they become more content inside, and they project that joy and happiness outside. And also when they're seeing their guys, and their guys notice the difference. That is why they want to step up a little bit more every time you lure with honey. So basically just common sense. But common sense is not that common, as I learned the hard way with the vast majority of people. So
yeah, and I suppose it does, and I suppose what's not being said here is a lowering of standards, right?
Not good, yeah. So basically, you still keep your standards. You do you. So let the guys respond to your standards without fixing them. I don't teach women to fix relationship, to fix a man. No, but just be true to yourself, and the right man will keep up with you. If he can't, then he's not the right man. This is why it's so important to master the art of detachment. You are involved, but detach. You are emotionally available, but detach. That sounds very contradictory, correct? This is why a lot of women don't understand. That's why they come to me, because it sounds very paradoxical. How can you still be in love and detach? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. It comes with inner work, with understanding how life works, basically, how the world operates, how people operate. So the understanding of ourselves will lead to the understanding of man and the understanding of all humanity. That's the beauty of it. Once you understand humanity, meaning you see your own self in other people you come across, you see your own reflection in other people, and vice versa, then you become a person who is so well-rounded, so whole, so together, no man can resist you. So that is at the very core of my teachings that just blew. My business blew up about like 2012. So I wrote my ebook and I published it myself, and it became a bestseller. Again, against all odds and beyond my wildest dreams. None of this I ever planned in my life. It's just serendipity.
Yeah. But is it the ultimate goal to be irresistible to men? Like, that is the question I'm asking. I'm being a bit of a, like, is that my purpose in life, to be doing everything so I'm irresistible?
Ultimate goal is to be so irresistible to yourself, to be so in love with yourself, not in a narcissistic way, but in the sort of compassionate, self-loving way. The most important thing in life is that you like you. When you like yourself, you avoid drama. You don't need drama because you're already full within yourself. You're happy. You don't need anything else in life. So, as I said, someone who is fully resolved within, don't need a man in a existential way to be happy. Yeah, we still need a man for handymanship. That's why we are in a relationship, guys. To be honest, I won't be in a relationship with a man who doesn't know how to do, handymanship and fixing things, because I need them to do that. So that kind of need is fine, because, in a relationship, you're gonna, at the end, it's about exchange of energy, right? What you bring to the table, complementing each other's weaknesses. So that is my requirement. But I don't need man sort of on an existential level that if I don't have man in my life, I'm gonna die. No.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be
okay. And I do agree with the energy bit. I feel like when you heal yourself and when you really step into your true essence as the woman that you want to be, and you choose to be who you choose to be, you can choose every single day to wake up and be miserable, or you can choose to wake up every day and be happy. That's the energy that you're going to project, and that's the energy you're going to attract. Absolutely. So it is within us of what we choose, and how we show up for ourselves is how we show up for others, and that is who we're going to attract. But you're right, if we're constantly in that negative energy, constantly wanting to please, constantly wanting to change and be for someone else, we will never attract that person, because we're not true to ourselves first. We need to heal and then deal.
Really. So, to attract a great man, you have to be great yourself. Yeah. Be the very person you seek, right?
Yes.
And then that person will find you, because the energetical match. So,
I was just going to say, because a lot of the spoken words here right now are through the lens of women, but almost all of this is also applicable to men as well.
That's right.
Right? Because it's a lot of the times in relationships, you're finding somebody because they make you feel a certain way, right? And which is fine, but when you were missing those pieces within you, whether it's that sense of love for yourself or sense of significance for yourself, where without that person, you don't feel that's when you get into, I think, you risk those toxic relationships, whether it's for the woman or for the man. Because as a man, you can find yourself in a relationship where it's like, oh, she makes me feel good about myself. And that's great. But then over time, right, if you're wanting to be in a long-term committed relationship, at some point, if, as you mentioned, Bella, if you're not doing that healing piece, right, as you said, Kat, if you're not working on making yourself whole, where whether you're with somebody or without somebody, I am happy. I love myself for who I am. I have a sense of significance in life. You will get to a point where all of a sudden that person no longer is filling that void anymore. And then you start to blame that person. You start to build resentment because they're no longer making you feel the way that you used to feel. But that's not, but the problem is not with them, right? The problem is that you need to work on your own self, right? The healing and your sense of self.
Because when you have done work on yourself, you will know your deal breakers, right? And when you find these deal breakers, you don't try to fix a guy. So you just let the guy be who he is and you be who you are. And if he doesn't meet your standards, he doesn't meet your deal, or he breaks your, he has deal breakers, then you just say, you're true to yourself because you align to who you are. This is not going to work, right? So instead of getting married and thinking, I can fix the guy when we are married, so let's just marry first and then I'll fix you later. That is a lot of times that's how women work in their minds. I can just, come on, marry me, because that's so important for them, for a lot of them. I want to get married. I want you to commit to me, marry me within 6 months. That's why some coaches say how to get married within 6 months of meeting a guy or something like that, which is stupid. Absolutely stupid. Why do you need to rush like that? So instead of just marry me and I'll fix you later, what about if I see you actually for the long haul? Right? Are you going to fit me in the long run? Are you really up to my standard in the long run? Because if you're not, I'm not going to have a project fixer-upper. So, I have to do this, to do that, to fix that is not quite right with me. It's not going to work. That's why a lot of relationship become so toxic, because of the attempts, not just women, of course, can be both ways, right? The attempts, but we're talking in this case because my clients are women, the attempts from the woman's side to change a man. That is not going to work. So you have to marry a man who is just perfect for you as he is right now, that he is perfect in all his imperfections and flaws. Are you going to be okay with him snoring? Are you going to be okay with him not doing the dishes right away? Because all these things, maybe we can somehow fix it. But for the most part, people are going to stick to their habits and way of doing things, way of being in the world, right? They probably will adjust because they love you a little bit. But if we don't somehow meet them in the middle, it's going to create a lot of tension in the relationship because of these unmet expectations, right? Especially if you are a clean freak, marrying a slob, for example. Could be the man or the woman. And it will be, a source of constant struggle and constant argument in the relationship. Just little things like that break the connection. So make sure first you'll be okay for 90% of who he is before marrying him. How's that?
So I know we're talking right now early on in stages. Maybe it's your first love and you're getting to know them. But there's, people middle age who you marry one person at the beginning and then we shift, we grow, we learn. Some people grow, some people don't.
Then it happens.
Right? So a lot of marriages break, at that 10-year, 15, 20-year mark because one person is growing and one person is not. And our needs change. As women, we change. What used to work for us is no longer working for us. So how would you coach somebody through that stage? Because if someone is not growing with you, how do you encourage them? How would you coach your clients to encourage them to help their partner grow?
Right. First of all, you just need to accept sometimes relationships and need to end. It's part of life. As you say, people grow throughout the years. A lot of couples grow apart, meaning the relationship sometimes has just run its course. You embrace it. So you go into the relationship, of course, hoping that you're going to grow old with this person for the rest of your life, right? You're going to have a thrive relationship. But sometimes it doesn't work that way because, shit happens.
Yeah.
And you grow, and you probably grow out of love as well. It happened. It happened to the majority of us. So just surrender to the journey. If you need to break up someday, not saying that you need to break up just because a problem, shows up at, or at the first day you already deciding to break up. Of course, you're going to work through all those things. But after years and years and years, and you you know who you are and you know what you want, and you know that this person is not going to catch up with you, for example, in terms of growth. And if you're not okay with that, if that affects your feeling about yourself because you don't feel alignment anymore in the relationship, yeah, then you're just gonna have to walk away. So I teach that as well as an option. So do not think that I cannot walk away. I cannot walk away ever. But of course, you're gonna have to work first. Whatever differences you have, because the likelihood is you have blind spots that you need to figure out. That is also important for your own growth, right? So the purpose of a relationship is to provide a mirror to us, so we can see our shadow. We can see our blind spot. If you're a neat freak and your guy is a slob, or your woman is a slob, then you will start walking toward being a slob a little bit more, so you can understand his point of view. Maybe you are a neat freak and you let go certain aspects of your life because you only have so much time in a day. If you clean 24/7, your other parts of your life will be basically neglected, right? Maybe you need to look into that. What is it in your life that you need to now start focusing on? Maybe working out, for example, you're a little bit overweight. Maybe what about channel that sort of urgency and an obsession of cleaning into working out, or attending to your business, or finding new hobby. That is the path of expansion. And the same process will also happen to him, right? He's a slob and he got nagged a lot of time by his wife. So he has to change somehow. Okay, then I'm going to start walking toward my shadow side, which is the neat freak side of me. Yeah, granted, you're not going to be as much a neat freak as she is, perhaps. But somehow you'll be better, throughout the years. And she will be worse in terms of neat freakness toward the years. So you meet somewhere in the middle. That is what inner work is basically all about. To embracing the other side of you. So instead of saying, I'm just a very clean person, or I'm a very this or very that. Well, you'll be surprised when I point out to you that you are basically very single-minded. You're not well-rounded. Because you identify with that. I'm a neat freak. I'm so proud of that, of myself. And you sort of discounting everything else. So I introduce, other aspects of life that probably you need to attend, because you spend 90% of your time cleaning. Who has the time all the time cleaning? Like, don't you have a life other than cleaning, right?
So how does someone, though, I guess, come to that point where they conclude that it's time to leave a relationship, where it's not too early? Because as you pointed out, there's a mirroring aspect. Sometimes when there is conflict or tension in a relationship, some level of discomfort in some way, it's there to draw your attention. And as you described, the opportunity to expand and grow, to figure out why does this bother me? Why is it an issue? Versus that this is a thing that I don't like in my relationship. And so instead of dealing with it, because you mentioned detachment, and I want to come back to that at some point, but there's attachment styles. And if somebody in the relationship is an avoidant, or maybe both are an avoidant, there can be those issues that they are not wanting to deal with. And instead of dealing with it, which would then creates that opportunity to grow and develop on the other side of that issue, that conflict, they'll avoid it altogether. So they lack the growth and development, but then could, end a relationship to move on and never actually grow and develop. So I think a part of the question is, yes, there's times where couples grow apart and the relationship needs to end. And, as you mentioned, you need to surrender to that. But then there's times where I think you don't end it, because there's working through that stuff also brings, depth and emotional connection as well, if dealt with properly. And it's not an easy question, but not an easy answer, I think. So how does someone kind of figure out when to stick with it because there's more growth, and when to leave? Yeah.
Right. If after you've tried, so many years to basically grow and then, embrace your shadow side and, expand your awareness and consciousness, and you just feel that this relation is no longer serving me. It no longer aligns to how I feel and who I am. Basically, you are out of love. That is what being out of love is. Meaning, like, I'd rather be alone than dealing with the bullshit of my guy or my woman. I'd rather be alone than dealing with the bullshit of the relationship. Then perhaps that's the time to walk away. But then again, it's not clear cut either. Because after you walk away, you're gonna miss the person. You're gonna miss the good parts of the relationship. It goes without saying, right? This is why it's tricky. That's why people always rebounding, because the minute they break up, oh my God, I miss that part of him. I know he annoys me so much a lot of times, but I miss that part of him. So meaning that perhaps you're not truly ready for that. That's why a lot of people who break up, they go back and forth for a little bit, few months or a few years, until they cut the cords, until they tie or they loose ends, because usually they start dating again, but their heart is not fully in it. That's why it's so difficult to date rebounding people, because they're still back and forth. They're not done yet. They're still an unfinished business. So personally, I would walk away from a relationship when it doesn't bring any more value into my life. Meaning I still probably respect and love him as a person, but I just don't feel that this relationship serves me anymore. Or maybe because you see, there are probably other options out there that I could find someone who match me better, whatever it is, because you grow apart throughout the years. I'm here and he's still here. And there's nothing I can do, to change that, other than the fact that I'm beginning to lose my attraction toward him. So when you lost your attraction to your partner, basically that's the time when you walk away. You lose the attraction. Attraction doesn't always mean have to be sexually, but in every way, emotional attraction. That piggybacking on that, emotional attraction is what's going to keep you together with your husband or wife, because even the sex fades, but you're emotionally connected to each other. You have each other's back. That is priceless. That is something you cannot buy. Sex can come easy, but emotional attraction, emotional connection, trust for each other, that is precious, priceless, right? That's what glues couples together. It's no longer about the sex or the physical attraction. Throughout the years, we're going to lose our shine. We're going to have pot bellies and we start balding. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, right? Was that a shot at me, Kat?
Sorry about that. Gray hair. Right?
He started balding him when I met him, so
exactly. So you're excluded.
Yeah.
And wrinkles. So the physical aspect is not gonna be there for you for the long haul, but the connection, the trust, the feeling that you are being seen, you are understood, that is priceless. That is something you won't let go. Because when everything's said and done, you need your best friend on your deathbed. That's how I feel.
Yeah. And I think an important part of either creating, maintaining, or getting it back, the connection, is the conversation, not just the observation. A lot of the time when we talk about, you mentioned like this kind of delta, this difference between when someone thinks that they're doing the work and they're growing and their partner's not. A lot of the times, or at least my experience has been with some couples, is one person has a view, kind of a perspective of what growing and developing or doing the work is, what it should look like. And the other partner, has a different view on what the work looks like. And regardless, I think there's a lot of different ways to go about it. But because they don't really talk about what they're going through, what they're learning about themselves, even we talk about those kind of shadow parts, shadow beliefs, those ugly parts that we don't really want to announce to the world. If we don't share that bit with our partner, then it looks like the other person's not doing the work.
Right.
And so having the conversation about what you're learning about yourself, even if it sounds horrible and you haven't put it into practice yet, so it hasn't materialized into action yet, but you've just had this kind of aha moment, it's important to share that with your partner because it brings you closer together. Right. It also creates that trust because you're being vulnerable in that moment. And studies show it's what creates trust is being vulnerable, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And so those are really important parts of creating that trust and keeping it together, that depth of emotional connection. But as well, it kind of helps close the gap between when one person looks at it and says, oh, I'm attending all these seminars and I'm reading all these books and doing all these things. And maybe the other person isn't, but what looks like a lot of doing the work might not be, because there's a lot of people that go and attend all these things, but they don't actually put what they're learning into practice. Right? And so I think having the conversations is so important.
And adding on that, a lot of women come to me, why my guys don't open up and all that. Yeah, because probably you haven't mastered the art of listening. Can you just listen more than speak? A lot of women love to speak and to express their feelings all the time, 24/7, in the name of being vulnerable, being true. But to the guy, you just nagging, and find problems. So in order for your partner want to open up and share, like you say, and speak up about and being vulnerable, then you need to learn how to listen. To listen meaning you stop hearing but listening. Hearing is when the other person speak and you are already planning what you're gonna respond back in your head, what kind of answer or argument I'm gonna say, instead of just listening in silence. So listen and silent have the same exact letters, same anagram, right? So listen requires you to be silent in your head, silent in your mind. Stop anticipating what he's gonna say and stop anticipating what you're gonna respond with, right? And a lot of women, through practicing the art of listening or listening skills, will encourage the guy to want to open up more because they feel safe to open up, because they don't feel judged. Listen and observe and then process more than speaking. Yeah, of course, in a conversation, you can also speak, but listen more than talk.
Do you think men could also learn how to listen between the lines of a nagging woman? Because we say the nagging woman.
Yeah.
But a nagging woman doesn't become a nagging woman until the
For no
trust
reason.
is broken. Exactly. Right? Because they say one thing they agree to. A lot of men will say, yes, I'll do that, honey. Or I'll do it.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
And then they do it 5 years later.
Right? Yeah, right? And then they don't. So
agree.
they're conditioning women to not trust their word. So after a while, when you are not taking accountability for how you've showed up for your woman, the nagging does not start at the very beginning of a relationship. The nagging starts from down 5 years, 10 years down the road, because you've said some things and now she doesn't trust it because you've broken your word. And she continuously has to remind you. And there's so much that we carry as women. We are different than men.
Agree.
We carry so much more within our heads that at some point it just gets exhausting to have a man-child, especially when children are involved, to be constantly reminding him of things.
Absolutely.
Are you my partner, or are you another, teenager that I have in my house that does not want to do the things I've asked them that they've committed to? So now I'm becoming the bad one. In relationships too, when there's children.
Absolutely.
The woman tends to be the disciplinary, the rule maker. And the dads are usually technically the fun ones until he gets mad and uses his manly voice, right?
Is that truly?
There's times where Bella, so we have a 9-month-old Australian Shepherd, and he listens, quite well, but there's times when he's not quite listening to Bella. I'll hear her start to lower her voice to try sound like me, because then he starts to listen a little bit better, right? But I do want to say, because we've used the term nagging here a lot, and I think nagging is also this, it's an unmet need of some type, right? And so instead of making it sound like this very negative thing that occurs, it's occurring because there's some form of unmet need. Sometimes it can be just something as simple as you're not, integrity being you're a person of your word. So you say you're going to do something and you do it. So you've fallen out of integrity. You said you're going to do something, you didn't do it. And so I want to have a discussion about this, right? But sometimes an unmet need can be you, and this isn't just men not doing something. It's both people in a relationship. But when you have somebody not doing what they said they were going to do, that can make your other partner feel kind of insignificant in a way, because it's like, well, you said you were going to do this because I said it was important to me, and you didn't follow through, you didn't do it, and then now there's this sense of sort of insignificance, or does it mean that I'm, maybe not loved enough? And
Or
so
I'm
again,
not
I think
important. My
that's
needs
right.
are not important because we're always wanting to meet the needs of our partner. But women tend to not have their needs met more. That's why we're nagging in quotation marks.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we're constantly asking for things that were promised and we're not getting them in return. So why do I show up for you when you ask me? Or why do I have to show up for you when you say, be more soft, be more gentle? Okay, allow me to be that by actually doing the things you said you were going to. So I think that's the
being
conversation.
Being very, emotionally intelligent, I think is so important, because a lot of people think they are when they're not. And when, as a man in a relationship, if you, just because we're using this kind of context of the woman nagging, I think men can nag also.
Absolutely.
Is that if there's a partner, if your partner's nagging, instead of just experiencing that as nagging and then writing it off as such, to be expansive, as you were talking about, Kat, to be expansive is to hold the perspective of, well, what need is missing here that's
Not
driving that's driving the nag. And if you're having a hard time really understanding being in that person's shoes and seeing it, then ask the question, right? Ask the question. Again, I think this is why it's so important to have these conversations in a relationship.
I agree. This is why inner work is so important. This is why it's so important to be in a relationship when you are full within yourself. So you'll be more prepared. Basically, when you are resolved within, you'll be able to see your own self in your partner and vice versa, right? When you see your own self in your partner, meaning your partner is going to annoy you from time to time. Your partner is going to...
Whatever.
Your partner is not going to always sort of like kowtow to your wants, desires, and needs. And it goes both ways. Just because we are the one who is upset more than our partner, doesn't matter it's a man or the woman. I'm just talking in general. Can be both men and women in the situation I'm talking about. Just because you are the one who is more vocal about your disappointments, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that you are not disappointing or annoying or irritating to your partner. Just because he's more quiet or she is more quiet about it, doesn't mean that you are not doing the things that the other person is doing. This is why you need to do the inner work, because when you do the inner work, you become just more understanding, more flexible, and less bothered. That's very important, the less bothered part. If you're always bothered by every little thing will become big, and you start focusing on problems. You start focusing on differences other than sameness. You obviously have a lot of sameness. That's why you're married to each other. But because you haven't embraced your shadow side yet, you cannot see what he sees, and you only find faults, to the way he or she is. Or I would just say they, right? Because it could be both ways. So you only see your perception of them because you cannot put yourself in their shoes. Then you begin to see problems. You magnify problems. Someone who is resolved within, finding out that their husband, for example, they say they're gonna fix these things and it's been 3 months, 6 months. You know what? I'm just gonna be proactive. It's clear that's it's not probably your forte or his forte. I'm just gonna hire, help to do this. And when he says something about it, well, it's been 6 months and it's not done yet. So instead of getting angry, and a lot of here's the thing, what makes me different to other people, the need to talk, the need to express ourselves. I don't have that in me. Sometimes, a lot of times, silence is the answer. That's why I'm known as the silence. I'm a very quiet person, silent person, because I don't think all that much. If you think a lot and you are bothered by a lot of things, you need to express a lot. You need to talk a lot. And a lot of times, unfortunately, the other person is not going to perceive your attempts to communicate as being vulnerable, but being controlling. That's the difference. So there are a lot of aspects of this that you need to approach. So, for example, like the art of detachment, number one, the art of talking less and listen more, and the art of embracing your shadow side, right? And of course, you're still going to be irritated by your partner. That is one thing that is unavoidable in a relationship. Doesn't matter how wonderful your relationship is, you're going to get annoyed every now and then. Are you going to accept it, or are you going to make a big deal out of it? That's the question. I accept the fact that I get annoyed in a relationship because I see him get annoyed with me too. Does it mean that I'm more annoying than he is or he's more annoying than me? No, it's just normal. We annoy each other in a relationship. The fact that I accept that remove the tension and the friction. But if you think this is so bad, this is so wrong, we're not supposed to fight at all. With that stance, you already feel that you are wrong. Your expectations aren't met. And you begin to focus more through the feedback loop. You focus more on his or her flaws. That magnifies every problem you have in the relationship. So pick your battles. If you know your man is not the type, who's gonna do things quickly, and you already say it so many times, nag so many times, just say it. Communicate all the time. And it's still not doing it. Well, you know what? It's time just to find another solution. Hey, babe, I think you're probably not very happy fixing the roof, fixing plumbing. Should we just hire someone to do it for you so you don't have to worry about it? Right? So if your partner is feeling seen and understood, right, they will try better. It's the opposite when they're feeling nagged. When they're feeling nagged, feeling communicated to all the time, they're less and less wanting and able to do as the other person wants them to do. That is the paradox of communication and nagging. It does work, communication, to an extent. But when it reaches to the part in which that this is who I am, I've been set like this all my life. So now my partner wants me to change. I try to change, but it's not good enough. And they're still nagging at me. Isn't it the problem? I think we try, we have changed, but it's just not good enough.
Yeah.
So pick your battles, guys. So when your woman is not really, a great cleaner, either you do it yourself or you hire a maid instead of just harping on it and getting into an argument each and every time that break the fabric of your connection.
So I think it comes to the communication coming up because like I said before, our needs change as we grow older, and the longer we're in relationship, things change. Like I said, I'm not the same person I was 21 years ago when I met my husband than I am today. We also went through life experiences. We've had children. So that adds another layer. My mother lives with us. That's another layer that's constantly added on top. So as our needs change, we need to be able to have a level of emotional intelligence, but also a communication setup, I guess, maybe, or a table, so weekly check-ins saying, okay, this is what I need from you today. This is what I need from you in a week. Sometimes I was just going through a tough time physically, perimenopause had hit and I was not able to function the way I have been for the last 20 years. So for him to expect me to show up the same is just not feasible at this stage of the game.
I agree.
We have to talk about and building those communication bridges, and that's safety, security, that I can come to my partner and say, hey, this is what I need. And for him to hear that need and not take it as she doesn't want to do this. That is the strength in couples and marriages that stay together. But if we're constantly thinking she's nagging, she's controlling, he's nagging, he's controlling, we're not actually diving to or reaching the root cause of why the breakdowns are happening. And it's going to break our relationship much faster. We went through almost a breakup a few years ago, and we came out on the other side much stronger with a completely different understanding of who we are as people and what we actually need, and how, like you said, learn to listen to each other, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So I think it is important to talk, and it's important to have those conversations where we can say, hey, I know I've been nagging or I've been asking for this. It hasn't been done. Can we sit and discuss why and what are the next steps forward that we need to take in order to solve this issue that is creating a wedge between us? Because The longer we go unresolved, the more resentment that we build and the faster our relationship deteriorates.
Right.
And that goes, in the beginning with new relationships and ones that, we've been 21 years together. So,
well,
yeah.
21 years plus a day for me.
Okay.
Right. So there's
So
for those listening who knows our story, they will know.
Can you
Right?
give me an example? What caused the rift that almost caused the breakup a few years ago between you two? What annoyed you?
An annoyance. It was actually the sudden death of my father.
I'm so sorry.
They moved in with us for retirement, and my dad was sick, and my mom, we found him in his room. He had a massive heart attack. So the whole family was shook, our children, everything. And that created the first step of the reveal of what was actually broken within our relationship, his disassociation, my need for the validation that, I am enough, that he is here. It just blew up. Right. So that was part of the beginning of the breakdown. And it was hard. He couldn't deal with the emotions. I couldn't deal with him not being there. So it really went on. And
the more I pulled away emotionally, the more she came in emotionally. Right. So this whole kind of disassociative cycle.
Yeah.
And so I needed to learn that, because a couple things that we talk about, like, really important. I think it's, as we have these conversations today, we talk about whether it's, nagging or whatever it is, anytime we're looking at the other person as the source of our negative emotion, with the exception of situations if there's like physical abuse, right? Verbal abuse, things like that. That's different. But for everything else, we need to put down the mirror and put down the magnifying glass and pick up the mirror. We need to do that first to really understand, what is it about this person's behavior that's really bothering me, right? Because once I started to really look into the mirror and not the magnifying glass, and realize, like, okay, what is it that I am bringing and not bringing to the relationship? What parts of our relationship not working do I own, right? Not always looking at your partner saying, this is the reason why it's not working, but really looking at mine. Then it was, I am avoiding the difficult conversations, because there's this belief that I used to have about discomfort that is wrong, right? There's something unsafe about it. And so I needed to really lean in to that, where when we were working on deciding whether we were going to kind of make the relationship work again, I would physically lean into difficult conversations to help kind of trigger that this is what I need to do, right? And I found that as I learned to do that better and learned to understand what was causing my own kind of triggers to want to not deal with stuff, that working through uncomfortable conversations actually brought us closer together. Because you have deeper conversations, right? There's more vulnerability and more emotion there. As I learned more about me, it allowed me that when Bella would bring something to the conversation that made me feel uncomfortable, instead of me immediately being, she's the source of the discomfort, I'm now looking inward saying, okay, where's that coming from? Okay, it's coming from this place, right? This, not feeling good enough, not feeling significant, whatever it is. Then I can kind of separate myself from that. And now that I'm not worrying about my needs being met because I'm doing it myself, I can now see better from her perspective.
That's inner work. That's what inner work is.
What need is not being met for her in this situation? Because if you can't do that, all you're seeing is your own needs. You can't see the other person. But once you're able to see how your own needs are not being met, then you free up some of that space, that expansiveness, like you talked about, to go and see what the other person's are, right? And that's what really, got us back on a path where, when Bella says we've come out the other side of that even just stronger, is because communication at the end of the day, right? Learning about ourselves. Yeah.
A partner needs to feel that they are being seen. So it applies to both of us. Yeah. So because we cannot really change other people, right? Everything has to start with ourselves. We are the only person that we can change. So to have it in mind, I think they respond better when I show up in a way that, hey, I understand you. I see where you're coming from. So when we show up that way, our partner sort of begins to lessen their defense, their defenses, right? So it's very important. So that is also a skill we need to master in a relationship. How to come across that, even though we want to express our grievances in the relationship, but first of all, we seek to understand, then be understood, right? So yeah, we understand, and then because we understand, they can relax. They lessen their defenses. We can begin attacking them.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, on that note, yeah.
It's important too, I think, to note as we have this conversation around growth and development and how it works inside of relationships, is that it's not a path to perfection. You know, it's a path to becoming better version of yourselves, to bring your relationship to a better version. But there's always going to be, you know, imperfection there.
Of course,
and
yes.
always going to be things that
Of
you
course.
can work on and always look for to do better. The feature of being a human is we make mistakes.
Yes.
Right? It's not a bug that we're trying to fix. It's a feature. It's going to happen. And so even as you learn these kind of new communication techniques and you learn new things about yourself and so on, sometimes you're going to get it wrong and you're going to make a mistake. You're going to get emotional. Something's going to happen. And the key part there is the repair, right? I think that is another huge piece that in our relationship that we did not do a good job with in the past on both sides, is if we had a breakdown in our conversation, it's easy to just, once enough time has gone by, it's better to pretend that it didn't happen or not bring it up, because it's an uncomfortable conversation. So let's just kind of move on. It's in the past now, but it remains unresolved, which means the next time something similar happens, or maybe the same thing, it's just going to amplify the conversation.
This
and
is
so you need
another
to come
skill.
back and have the repair.
Backing on what you say, this is another skill that I teach, that we need to learn to die to the past every waking moment of our lives. This is exactly what you say. When you don't die to the past, every little things will just gonna pile up until one day it'll explode. So not so much that you fight because of what happened. What happened was usually is very minor, right? It's small, but because it has been building up for years upon years unresolved, because you're not able to let go and die to those things, then it becomes, at one day, it's like a ticking bomb and explodes. So the idea, or not the idea, but the stance of dying to the past is you are able to just treat a situation, a circumstance, an event, or an incident at what it actually is in the moment, not always relating it to what happened in the past. 5 weeks ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago. That feeling, you always do the same thing over and over again. That's what makes you so desperately angry, correct? And this is why a lot of us explode, when we feel that we are not being seen, we are not being respected, we're not being heard. But when you are able to die to the past, you will be able to just see what happened today in fullness in itself, without linking it to what happened 20 years ago. And admittedly, that is not a very easy thing to master at all. It's very hard for most people. Dying to the past is the missing aspect of relationship advice in the coaching industry. So if you're able to die to the past, what happened today, look, he forgot to wash the dishes again. It's not gonna make you explode. It's just a small thing. He doesn't wash the dishes right away, or she. It's not the end of the world. But a lot of people are not able to see that it's not the end of the world, because they are so flooded with memories of the past, because most people live in the past or the future. Very few people are able to maintain presence in the moment consistently. Without referring to the past or anticipation of the future. That is also something that will make a whole of difference in a relationship. And another thing, you, Bella, mentioned about validation. You don't feel validated sometimes. And I'm sure everyone in a relationship will feel that way from time to time. I don't feel validated. But when you come to the relationship or you already done your inner work that you become so fully resolved within, external validation isn't going to be that significant anymore because you validate yourself all the time. So it becomes less and less source of friction and tension in the relationship because you don't expect that from your partner to validate. I mean, it's nice to be validated. And sometimes I agree, you always nitpick about my wrongdoings. What about the things that I do right that you never say anything about? There is also a part of us pointing out to our partner that, sometimes you need to validate, not because I need the validation, but I need you to see that all your accusations that I'm always this, I never that, is so completely untrue. In relationship, we use that term all the time. You always do this. You never do that, which is for the most part is completely untrue because we will discount all, the opposite things that our partners do because we are so flooded with our own unresolved issues.
That's right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you come to the relationship already whole, those little things are not going to enslave your mind anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like the focal point of your awareness. As I said, I don't talk a lot because I don't think a lot. When your mind is quiet, your mouth is quiet too. Whatever it is that you are going to express will be formed first in the mind, in the head. So if your mind is chaotic, you have a lot of past broadcasts, past disappointments, and a lot of expectations of the future, then you're not gonna be in the moment. And you will be so restless. Restlessness is a low level of energy. And if you bring restlessness into the relationship, do not expect your partner going to be happy about it or to be so turned on by it. They're going to avoid the conversation. They're going to avoid you because they don't want drama. So it's very important. The art of quieting your mind.
Mm-hmm. And just, lastly, as we start to bring this to a close, Kat, I want to go back to that one piece of this conversation where the term you used was, dying to the past. We use a term kind of getting complete, with the past. The power in that, in case someone missed it, is it's not about tolerating repeat behavior and stuff like that might be not meeting standards. It's the ability to not tolerate it without being emotional about it. So if you're in a relationship and there's, something a lot worse than somebody not washing the dishes, getting complete with the past is just allowing yourself to make a choice about what you want to do in the relationship, maybe even leave the relationship, but being able to do so from a positive place because you're not negatively emotional about those recurring things. Because being in a positive, energetic state is, of course, way more powerful than being in a state of focusing on what you don't want and attracting that negative energy. Because in that case, you're way more likely to end up leaving that relationship and just finding another version of that same relationship just with someone else. Right. And so I think that's the importance of, as you put it, kind of dying to the past.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for
the
conversation. Yeah, it was so lovely to have you on. Yeah, so the goal was never to tell you what to think. It was to give you something worth thinking about. So we always say stay curious and keep asking better questions. Till next time.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode and gained valuable insights to elevate your life and business.
If you found value in our conversation, spread the love. Share this episode with family and friends, and let's grow this supportive community together.
And don't forget to like and follow us so we can reach more amazing people just like you.
Until next time, remember, let's not sugarcoat it. Keep it real, raw, and unfiltered.